International trade physically moves cargo, but financially it moves national reserves. When capital outflows happen ahead of incoming physical shipments, governments face immediate pressure on their foreign currency holds. To restrict unchecked capital flight, the Sri Lankan government finalized a strict intervention mandate to override the existing system. This is the Government Gazette for the Imports and Exports Control Regulations number 06, dated June 18, 2026. Regulation 2 outlines the law's intent to strengthen the effective monitoring and oversight of outward remittances made from Sri Lanka in respect of import transactions. Historically, commercial banks processed advance payments for importers with significant autonomy. If an importer had capital and a pro forma invoice, the bank transmitted the wire with minimal prior customs verification. That historical autonomy is now legally void. The government replaced the old process with a closed-loop capital monitoring system. In a closed loop, outward financial transfers are strictly tethered to incoming, verified customs records before the money ever leaves the country. Operating this closed-loop system requires a two-pronged, interconnected architecture, a set of rigorous prerequisites for the importer, and a new set of binding mandates for the commercial bank. Standard corporate banking compliance is no longer sufficient to clear an import remittance. Let's examine exactly what the new law requires. The compliance burden begins entirely with the importer. They must execute their sequence perfectly before any banking action can even be considered. Looking at Regulation 8, subsection 4, it makes it mandatory for an importer to be registered with the Sri Lanka Customs Department as an eligible importer prior to effecting any advance payment. A standard business registration or a basic taxpayer identification number is insufficient to meet this legal standard. The importer requires an active, specific validation. According to this notice from the Customs Registration Unit, the only acceptable proof of this validation is a formal certificate issued under Section 115A(1). Securing this vital certificate demands strict compliance. Point 2 confirms it is issued only to companies whose importer registration is activated on a full-time basis, meaning for a period of 1 year or for the total validity period of their temporary VAT certificate. Point 3 outlines a critical disqualifier. Certificates will not be issued to companies that have been granted extensions of their temporary registration period. If a supply chain relies on administrative grace periods to clear its domestic tax paperwork, it will fail to obtain this document. By tying the certificate to active tax hygiene, Customs acts as a hard gatekeeper. Without it, an importer's international purchasing power is entirely frozen. Until the importer presents that valid certificate to a commercial bank, the bank's ability to facilitate the transfer is legally restricted. This restriction is explicitly written into law. Regulation 6 mandates that commercial banks shall not effect any advance payment unless the relevant importer has duly registered with customs. This shifts liability directly onto the banking sector. Commercial bankers are legally accountable for validating active customs status before initiating any SWIFT transfer. This raises the operational question: what exactly happens when the importer successfully presents their valid certificate to the bank? At that exact moment, the bank transitions from an independent financial service provider into a secondary enforcement checkpoint. Accepting the valid importer certificate triggers an immediate active data reporting requirement. The bank must stream real-time telemetry back to customs. Regulation 4 outlines the first mandatory action. The bank must assign a unique number to each individual transaction. Tied to that unique number is a 12-point list of specific transaction data that must be immediately transmitted. Points A through D identify the foundational actors, the taxpayer identification and addresses of the remitter, alongside the address and account details of the foreign beneficiary. Points E through G lock in the precise financial mechanics, the bank codes, currency type, and amount. The final required data points, K and L, are the most crucial: the pro forma invoice number and the specific description of goods. Capturing the invoice number and the exact goods description closes the monitoring loop. It proves that the outgoing capital maps precisely to an impending physical import. This specific telemetry prevents a company from securing an active customs registration and then using it to funnel capital offshore for unrelated, unapproved purchases. Every outward dollar sent as an advance payment is now digitally tethered in real time to a specific, verified commodity. By looking at the complete architecture, we can see the exact dependencies required in a single chronological workflow. Step 1. The importer secures full-time, non-extended VAT status domestically. Step 2. The Customs Registration Unit verifies this status and issues the 1115A1 certificate. Step 3. The importer physically presents this certificate to their commercial bank, providing the legal basis for the bank to proceed. Step 4. The bank initiates the transfer by generating the mandatory unique transaction number. Step 5. The bank transmits the exhaustive 12-point data payload back to Customs. Step 6. With the data verified and the transaction tethered to an invoice, the loop is closed and the advance payment is legally executed. Attempting to parallel path or skip these requirements is mathematically impossible under the parameters of the new law. The sequence is absolute. This operational reality takes force on June 19, 2026. Supply chain managers and procurement officers must adjust their lead times immediately to account for this strict sequence. Domestic tax compliance and international supply chain velocity can no longer operate as separate departments. They are now one legally fused timeline.